In today's edition of Archaeology Crime, we are going to delve into perhaps the single greatest crime against cultural heritage since the end of World War II, the looting of the Iraq National Museum in Baghdad during the 2003 US-led invasion. Over a chaotic 36 hours, thousands of artifacts, some dating back to the dawn of civilization, were stolen or destroyed. We'll explore what happened, the global efforts to recover these treasures, and the ongoing quest for justice. It's April 10th, 2003, and Baghdad is in turmoil. The US-led coalition has just toppled Saddam Hussein's regime, and the city is engulfed in chaos. As American troops advance, the Iraq National Museum, a treasure trove of Mesopotamian history, sits unprotected. This museum, founded in 1923 by British archaeologist Gertrude Bell, houses relics from the Sumerian, Babylonian, and Assyrian civilization, artifacts that trace the origins of writing, cities, and agriculture. Over the next day and a half, looters storm the museum. An estimated 15,000 objects are stolen. Much of the looting was somewhat random. Enraged Iraqis looking to strike out against a symbol of the Baathist regime, or small-time thieves hoping to make a little money at the fall of Saddam's decades of brutal dictatorship. Hence, in the days that followed, the community came together to return a lot of the stolen artifacts, and spontaneous displays of what was termed anti-looting occurred. However, this theft was the decided minority, as much of the looting was anything but random. Evidence suggests that multiple organized groups were at work. There were definitely professionals at work who targeted high-value collections like the Treasure of Nimrod, a collection of ancient gold and jewels. Luckily, unbeknownst to the looters, that treasure was locked up in a safe elsewhere. One group even accessed a secure underground storage area, suggesting insider knowledge. But the museum's staff heroically hid over 8,000 objects before evacuating. In any event, the losses were unfortunately staggering. Some of the notable items taken: the iconic Lady of Warka, often called the Mona Lisa of Mesopotamia; the bronze Besetki statue; the headless statue of King Entemena of Lagash; the 5,000-year-old Warka vase; the gilt ivory plaque called the Lioness and the Nubian; and the harp of Ur, which was torn apart to extract the gold inlay. Initial reports exaggerated the loss at 170,000 artifacts, while the true figure of 15,000 was still catastrophic. The world was outraged. Archaeologists like the University of Chicago's McGuire Gibson had warned the Pentagon about the museum's importance, but US-led forces failed to secure it, instead prioritizing infrastructure and oil fields. 3 members of the White House Cultural Property Advisory Committee resigned in protest. The looting wasn't just theft, it was a blow to humanity's shared heritage. As Donnie George, former director of the museum, said, "Every single item lost is a great loss for humanity."
At the beginning, when I saw this destruction that was in the museum and these pieces that were taken, I felt that my life was finished.
Enter Marine Colonel Matthew Bogdanos, a Manhattan prosecutor and classic scholar nicknamed Pitbull. In April 2003, he formed an ad hoc team to investigate, pledging that the U.S. would be in it for the long haul.
Undoubtedly aware, the process of recovering stolen art and antiquities can take decades.
Bogdanos' team secured the site and began cataloging losses with the museum staff. He offered an amnesty to those who would return items, no questions asked, and offered rewards. These efforts led to early successes. The Lady of Warka was found buried in a farm near Baghdad after a tip-off. The Besetki statue, covered in grease and hidden in a cesspit, was recovered in a raid. After just a couple of months, the Warka vase was returned in response to the amnesty, albeit in 14 pieces. By 2006, Bogdanos' team had recovered about 10,000 artifacts. Recovery efforts went global. Interpol and UNESCO tracked items down to places like London and New York, and even on eBay. In 2003 alone, US customs officials seized 669 items in FedEx boxes destined for one New York art dealer. In 2006, that headless statue of Sumerian King Entima of Lagash was recovered in New York with the help of another good art dealer. In 2015, a statue of Assyrian King Sargon II was returned. It had been traced to a dirty dealer in Dubai, how's that for alliteration, before being shipped to the US. That investigation, called Operation Lost Treasure, how original, identified a broad transnational criminal organization dealing in illicit cultural property. Some of the network shipments were directly linked to major museums, galleries, and art houses in New York. By 2021, it's estimated that about 7,000 of those 15,000 stolen museum artifacts were returned, and Bogdanos' team and others were also returning other artifacts that disappeared from other museums and cultural sites. But the museum looting was just part of the tragedy. Archaeological sites across Iraq, like Babylon and Ur, were ravaged. Estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of artifacts were plundered from these sites between 2003 and 2007. Following the invasion, the global antiquities trade exploded, with experts such as Oxford University archaeology professor Neil Brody estimating a $10 million daily turnover. Social media apps later fueled this black market, especially during Syria's civil war. In 2021, Iraq celebrated the return of 17,000 artifacts, mostly cuneiform tablets from the US, including from the Museum of the Bible, whose owners paid $3 million in fines for illegal imports. Many of these items had been shipped to Hobby Lobby, their popular chain of craft stores, which was compelled to return thousands of clay tablets to Iraq. In 2023, another 23,000 looted artifacts were returned, and by March 2025, Iraq's General Authority for Antiquities and Heritage announced a monumental achievement: the recovery of 27,000 looted relics from within Iraq and abroad, all returned to the National Museum. Despite this progress, UNESCO estimates another 40,000 artifacts remain at large, scattered around the world, a reminder of the ongoing monumental task ahead. And aside from a few bright spots, justice for all those looters and dirty dealers has been elusive. We already heard about Hobby Lobby, and in addition, a US scholar was convicted in 2006 with smuggling some of those cylinder seals. And in 2022, 7 seals were repatriated after a US collector tried to auction them online. However, as we know, these cases are notoriously difficult to charge, and in them we see the same features that we see in other archaeology crime. Networks of dirty dealers, negligent, some would say willfully so, museums, and the opportunities that a war zone creates for this type of plunder. But unlike in many cases, here we actually have quite a lot of good news in terms of all the repatriations. Moreover, the Iraq Museum reopened in 2015, a big win for the Iraqi people and humanity.
The nation's most prestigious museum was looted in the chaotic aftermath of the US-led invasion. American forces were criticized for standing by and watching the ransacking. Now its doors are open and much of Iraq's cultural heritage is again proudly on display.
So while I wouldn't exactly call this a happy ending, it certainly ended better than it otherwise could have, so let's take the W where we can. However, my concern is, with so few high-level prosecution, those looking in the future to profit off of war and chaos have not been adequately deterred. Look, in war, people are desperate and shit happens. That's why we try to avoid war in general. Cultural heritage is just a small part of that. But unless we seriously disrupt and punish the international networks who profit off of this stuff and the insatiable buyers in the end markets, there's always going to be willing buyers and strong markets for illicit antiquities, and hence archaeology crime. Hey, If you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.